So, Bayonetta 3 is gonna be a thing now? Well, alright then. It's about time I get this series under my belt with reviews before the Umbra Witch's third adventure. Now, I covered Bayonetta 1 last year, so it's time to take a look at Bayonetta 2, originally for the Wii U and ported to the Switch. Interestingly, both the Wii U and Switch had kind of a cool deal with them. Physical copies of the Wii U version came with discs of both Bayo 1 and 2, though the Switch version comes with Bayo 2 physical and a download code for 1. But if you pick up the games digitally, here's how it works. If you buy Bayonetta 1 for $30, then the price of Bayonetta 2 would go down to $30, so $60 in total. But if you were to get Bayo 2 first for $50, the price of Bayo 1 would drop down to $10. Once again, $60. That's an awesome deal, and I love that they did that. There was a lot of talk of Bayonetta 2 when it was first revealed. Of course, Bayonetta fans were excited to see their dear Cereza back in action, but one of the biggest news was that it wasn't coming to a Microsoft or Sony platform like the first game, but it was going to be an exclusive on the Wii U. With Nintendo. Family-friendly Nintendo was going to be the system that they put a game like this on. It was strange to say the least, and there was a lot of hate being thrown around at first. I wasn't mad, a Nintendo fan myself, it didn't really matter to me personally, but it did feel like such an odd choice when the other two platforms would probably have more of an audience for Bayonetta. But then we got word on what was happening. So Sega published the first game for Platinum, and partially did the sequel, but they didn't want to go in with the full funding required for Bayonetta 2, because they wanted to focus on more consistent franchises like Total War, Aliens, and Sonic. The fact they said Sonic and consistency in the same sentence still makes me laugh. But anyway, the game was pretty much about to get scrapped, but then Nintendo came in and saved the project, publishing the game. But that meant the game would now be exclusive for Nintendo platforms. Look, the executive director came out and spelled it pretty clear. Without Nintendo, Bayonetta 2 wouldn't even exist. So I am thankful for Nintendo coming to help out and even make the game a reality, even if it's outside of their comfort zone to do so. But really, no one, not one other company came in to help Bayonetta 2 despite the first game being critically acclaimed and considered one of the best action games of all time? No one? Well, I guess it's their loss at this point since both games being on Nintendo platforms, Bayonetta 3 coming exclusively to the Nintendo Switch, and of course her inclusion in Super Smash Bros. 4 and Ultimate, Bayonetta is basically a Nintendo character now at this point. But anyway, that was a lot of intro for this. Let's dive into the actual game. So it's been a few months since the first game and it's around Christmas time. Look, I know this game takes place there in December, but I'm reviewing it at Halloween, but work with me here. So Bayonetta is just minding her own business when angels start attacking her as per usual. She does a casual climax in public and suddenly Gamora breaks free of Bayonetta's control and attacks her, but John steps in and gets her soul quite literally dragged to hell. After dealing with the threat, Rodin says that the balance between Paradiso and Inferno is out of whack. This is the result of one Lothar, this diamond-shaped guy who wants both eyes of the world, yada yada yada. If you played the first game, you know how this whole spiel goes. But anyway, John's soul is basically on a timer until it's gone forever, and Bayonetta decides to head to the gates of hell in order to bring her friend back. Along the way, she runs into Loki, this young boy who can't remember anything, but is probably a fan of Yu-Gi-Oh! Judging by that Millennium Puzzle. A returning Luca from the first game, this Lumen Sage who is helping Lothar out, who, yeah, he's exactly who you think he is if you played the first game. Look, here's the thing, it's similar to the first game where there's a simple objective but a lot of flavor text on what's going on. But just like the first game, I don't really care about a lot of what's happening. Look, all I need is that Bayonetta is going after Jean's soul and that's it, but the rest is very bloated for lack of a better word and doesn't really amount to much in the end. So I didn't end up caring for the story itself. It also feels like it was a big missed opportunity because the scene that I mentioned where Gamora breaks free of Bayonetta's control, that's the only time this happens and it feels like a half-hearted excuse on why demons attack you now. I would think they would just go after you just because of the fact you're in hell and yeah, but I'm not playing Bayonetta games for plot, so I'm not gonna waste too much time on this. Bayonetta was already a stylish as hell game, but Bayonetta 2, I mean, wow, does it step it up to the next level. The game runs at 60 FPS at all gameplay times, and environments look gorgeous and are honestly way more varied than before. Bayonetta 1 was going for a much more gothic kind of style, which is fine, But from the towns, to Paradiso, to inside Mount Thimbleventer, to Inferno, the game just pops out so much more. Plus, I like the blue color scheme a lot more as well. It contrasts a lot better to the world around you. In fact, colors just shine through a lot more, which makes the game feel much more energetic than last time. I also want to give credit to the character models. They look a lot cleaner this time in my eyes. Especially Bayo's model, just wow, it looks great. And while I am a fan of both designs, I gotta say, I'm kinda digging the shorter hair a lot more. It's not really a critique, I just wanted to say that. And of course the animation is just as good as before. The soundtrack is still rocking the same jazzy goodness, though I will say I prefer Tomorrow Is Mine as a battle theme compared to Bayonetta the Mystery. While I do truly love Moon River, it doesn't play as much times as Fly Me to the Moon did back in Bayo 1, which is a shame. But to be critical here, the one change to the presentation I didn't like as much as Bayo 1 is that the movie film reel scenes from the first game have now been replaced by a clock that transitions to different stills. While I can get away saying there was some kind of style to these in Bayonetta 1, these just don't cut it for me. They feel really bland and don't add much to the story or presentation. But other than that, Bayonetta 2 is a fantastic game presentation-wise, so let's head on to the gameplay. If you were worried at all that the action has been toned down in the sequel, don't worry. Bayonetta is still the crazy action-filled ride it ever was. You still journey through a level pummeling everything in your way trying to get the best combo and time on a verse without getting hit to get the best rank possible, and in between fights you are still looking for returning witch hearts and pearls, increase your vitality and magic meter, items that give you an edge in battle, LPs to give you new weapons, Muspelheim portals, this game's Alpine portals, to do bonus challenges to get a reward at the end. Though there are a few big tweaks to the system. First off, Bayonetta restarts the game back at square one for the most part, but she does retain Panther within, which is a godsend. Items no longer take away from your rank, which is amazing. But the biggest new addition comes in the form of Umbran Climax. You remember how Bayonetta would let down her hair during certain boss fights in the first game? Well, now you can tap into that power for a short amount of time, and perform massive wicked weeds that nothing in the game can stand up against. There are also new types of boss fights where Bayonetta will be using her wings for traversal. It's more of a set piece kind of thing. And the new big boy to play with, Umbran Mechs. Yes, we got ancient medieval witches who use cybernetic mechs. I love this franchise. Anyway, you don't get to use these much, but they are a powerhouse and enjoy every minute of them. They're so much damn fun. Outside the main game, there's also a brand new mode known as Tag Climax. Yeah, that's the name, I know. Where you and a buddy can go online or locally with two Switches perform co-op missions to earn halos to use in the main game. So get a good pal of yours and climax with one another. This part worked better in my head. But that's the main gameplay changes for Bayonetta 2, so what are the things that Bayonetta 2 does right? Now, last section of the review I didn't have too much in it, mainly because Bayonetta 2 is one of those games that has a lot of quality of life changes that don't change things fundamentally, but lead to a much better experience overall. For one, the rebalanced item system. In Bayonetta 1, using any item would take away from your score, discouraging you from ever using them. In Bayonetta 2, they no longer take away from your score. So feel free to take that possibly weed-filled lollipop if need be. Thank you. Also, enemies, while challenging, don't feel as bad as the enemies from the first game. They all seem to respond to witch time much more often and have much more readable patterns, so there's nothing like Grace and Glory from last time. Not to mention, with you fighting both angels and demons, the enemy variety feels great as well. You're never fighting the same enemy for too much, unlike the first game where they pretty much had Grace and Glory show up every waking minute by the end game. The level design also has a lot more going on in it. Bayonetta does have this new ability where after she jumps, if you hold the button down you can descend at a slow pace, giving you more horizontal movement. This combined with your other abilities means Bayonetta can get some serious mobility, and I ended up finding secrets here way more than the original. Whether it be Muspelheim portals, which I found more fun and varied than before, and they're much more abundant here than in the first game. New treasure boxes where you need to collect all the pieces in a time limit, rewarding you with a special item like a witch heart or pearl, or extra fights to increase my rank at the end of a level. Exploration can't hurt, it can only help you. You also remember how in Bayonetta 1, I pretty much used the guns, claws, and sword and not really any of the other weapons? that ain't the case here. Maybe it's just more of a player preference thing, but I found much more utility in the weapons this time around. One of the big reasons I feel is because you're given way more freedom because most of the weapons can be equipped to either your hands or feet this time. You want all 4 limbs to be swords? Go on ahead. You want a crossbow on your arms and whip on your feet? Why the hell not? You want to wield a giant hammer in your arms and use a chain chomp on your feet? You go do you. But hey, you know, at least I finally convinced Rodon to change his mind.
No matter how much you ask, I'm not putting a chainsaw on your arm.
I like chainsaws. But I just felt like I was rewarded so much more for using the different weapon types in different combinations, yielding different results, and got me thinking a lot more about what to do in each fight, creating an overall greater feeling of satisfaction in combat, and made me giddy to see what kind of weapon I was gonna get next. The Umbran Climax is also a fun new addition. When you just want to go all out on a group of enemies and just watch everything get crushed around you, oh, it feels good. And I love how every weapon has a completely different finishing effect, which again made me want to use every weapon to see what they had in store. While there are story scenes aplenty, they definitely didn't go as long as the first game. It also helps that we aren't getting flashbacks to the same scene multiple times. And it's good about giving you just enough and then heading back into the action. Speaking of which, rejoice! Those quick time kill events are no longer a thing anymore! So you can actually enjoy the cutscenes this time without worrying a prompt is gonna come up and kill you.
Hallelujah! 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 Hallelujah!
Now if you don't do the ones during the climax and such, you can die. But that is when you're in the climax phase of the fight, so you're expecting it at that point, so I don't mind it. Especially since it leads to you beating up the creature afterwards. Also, they made button mashes nowhere near as hard as before. Now it doesn't take many button presses to win them, which, thank you, I can play this game without feeling like I'm gonna break my Pro Controller. And I want to finish this off by saying that the game's pacing, structure, and ability to keep stepping up its game every chapter is just phenomenal. Let's put it like this. You fight angels on a plane, that plane gets sliced in half so you have to go onto a subway, and fight a boss there when you slam them into a skyscraper with a demon, then you fight that demon on a skyscraper before taking that demon down and slamming them on the ground. And that's all just a prologue. And you'd think it would slow down from there, but no. It only gets crazier from there. You fight a demon in a whirlpool, you fight a lumen sage in the belly of a demon with blood all around you, quite literally go to hell and fight the queen there by ripping her open. The game never loses its sense of grand scope and just keeps escalating over and over until the end, and creates this adrenaline high for you wanting to keep going. Let's put it like this, after beating the game again for this review, I immediately went back through and played the game 2 more times. I just loved playing it so much. Not to mention you have other characters such as Jean returning from Bayo 1, though her unlock conditions are much lower than the first game. Not as much health, but powerful wicked weaves. Rosa, another Umbra Witch from the story who uses revolvers as guns, a detail I love by the way, who can't use other weapons, but her Umbran Climax gives you access to the mech, and oh my goodness does it tear through everything. She's one of my favorites to use. And there are 2 others you can get, but I'll leave that for you to figure out. So the game is filled with replay value, and I love going back to it. But there are a few things that can bring the experience down. While Bayonetta 2 does away with most of the annoyances from the first game, it does have a few from the previous entry and it adds in a few more. There are these new scenes where all Bayo can do is walk while talking to Loki. They're alright your first playthrough, but on repeats, you still need to go through them even if you played the level before, and they do nothing but get in the way, and to my knowledge there's no way to skip them. While I do appreciate them giving you Pamper Within from the start, it's a little disappointing you have to re-buy everything from the shop again just like the first game. Stuff like power-ups and costumes I totally get, but buying my techniques again? Especially when this game takes place so quickly after Bayo 1? I feel like these should have been part of your moveset from the beginning. And while I do love Umbran Climax, I can see the complaint that makes Bayonetta a little too powerful. On one hand, Bayonetta can take out everything. On the other hand, Bayonetta can take out everything. So it effectively can become an I win button. Even though you do tend to get a lot less combo points using it, so it's not as encouraged to be spammed everywhere, for casual play it can wreck through everything with no issue. But some enemies can get really frustrating with how little you're able to get in on them before the revenge value sort of kicks in, so I don't mind using it against them. There also are a few enemies that can be annoying. These demons that can change you back into Cereza from Bayonetta 1, and if they grab you then it's an insta-kill? Yeah, that got annoying. So as soon as I see them, Umbran Climax right away and don't give them a chance to breathe. But trust me, they are nowhere near as bad as Grace and Glory. Oh god, Grace and Glory are back. Oh god, no. Oh, that was it. Oh, that was nowhere near as bad as before, okay. But I'm also not a big fan of one of the parts of the earlier bosses with the waterboard. There was a boss similar to this in Bayo 1, but this section goes on for too long for me. But the second part of the fight is flying, so I'm okay with that. In all honesty, there's only one boss I truly don't like. The final boss. It sucks, flat out. He has way too many invincible attacks and revenge value moves. You can barely combo him. It's just hit dodge the entire fight. And the end is such a Bayonetta 1 repeat on a lower scale. It's the one time where the great bosses of Bayo 2 take a screeching halt, and it's not the best way for the game to go out on. And I do personally think you really should play the first game before going into this one. Not only because most purchases come with both, but there are major callbacks near the end of the game that won't have the same kind of impact. But at the same time, there are points that are blatantly taken from the first game, like the middle finger ignition, or the finisher to the final boss, or stuff like that. Whenever it happens, I was slightly disappointed seeing them reuse similar ideas again. But at the end of the day, I do see Bayonetta 2 as the better game. Bayonetta 2, despite having a few issues here and there, is a sequel that takes everything that already worked so well, doesn't overhaul it, but polishes it up just enough to become the better game in my book. I feel like I'm rewarded for exploration more, the fights are more intense than ever, I love all the new weapons you can get, the pace consistently climbing, the combat is as rich as ever, it's a great time all around. I cannot recommend Bayonetta 2 enough, and hey, the fact that you can get them both together just makes it all the more enticing. And you can sure bet, with everything great Bayonetta 2 did, I'm just waiting to see what the third entry has in store. Anyway, happy Halloween guys!